Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast, Conversations with a Cause, with social entrepreneur Safaraz. As well as being the author of the Canny Bites books, Saf's business interests cover health and social care, business and corporate events, as well as him being the CEO of Pathway Group, a welfare to work and skills provider. In these podcasts, he shares his thoughts with journalist Adrian Kibler. So, let's join the conversation.
Hello and welcome to Canny Conversations with Safaraz. This Canny Conversation aims to bring you a canny conversation with a cause, conversations that will captivate your curiosity cannily. And we hope that that's what we've done over the past 3 months. And it's the final one in this series, although we very much hope and expect to be back before too long. This is a time to reflect, Saf. So how have you enjoyed the last period doing these podcasts?
It's been different, Adrian. It's been, as I say, an experience. I think the best thing about doing any podcast or any sort of creative exercise is that it gives you time to reflect and think. Some of the time you've got certain thoughts, but it gives you more clarity over your own thinking, over your own thoughts. And what it's done for me is it's not just about content that we've created for the podcast, but I've had to then make notes, and then I thought, okay, you know what, that can work for me as possibly a blog, or that could work for me as a piece that I can share with the team, the staff. So there's multiple elements of benefits of doing this in terms of, we were thinking about initially whether, I was thinking initially whether to do a podcast or not. I've been thinking about it for 3 years. Took the decision to do so because I reframed the question in my own head. And I said, if somebody asked me the question, should I look at doing a podcast, or should I look at doing a video, or should I start creating videos, or should I start blogging? My answer would always be yes, of course. The best time may have been to start 3 years ago or 5 years ago, but ultimately the best time is now, rather than, leaving it and then, in a year's time or further down the line thinking that I should have done this or grasped the opportunity and go for it. So I'm glad that, we've gone on this journey of Canny Conversations podcast. It's definitely grown my audience in terms of people that have looked at my content or listened to my content. And I've got in touch with some good people as well. And I've had some good reviews and I'm really appreciative. And at the same time, ultimately, I've learned a heck of a lot myself in terms of my own thinking and my own beliefs and my own views. So thank you.
The other point is that these Canny Conversations are based upon the Canny Bite books, business wisdom books, and Saf has written 3 of those. And if anybody wants to listen again to the podcast, the great thing about podcasts, of course, is they're always there and you can catch up and you can repeat them and you can listen again. And they're also amplified what we're speaking about in the 3 books. One of the things that we've asked and really want people to do is say we want people to subscribe, we want people to like, and we want people to provide them with their feedback. And I think what I'd like to do, Saf, if it's okay, is just to pick up a couple of things that our listeners have been talking about. I mean, the great thing about this is we said that we were going to start a conversation, and my goodness me, we've done that. But let's pick up a couple of points. A lot of people have said some wonderful things, and particularly about 1386 Audio, the people that have been working with us on this. One listener, though, Saf, proves that he's been listening. He was very interested, and I say that politely, when we talked in one of the early episodes about businesses as families, and you said that a business should be, as far as possible, a family. You talk about the Pathway family and all the rest of it. He said, well, I don't think that's really realistic. He said that in any family environment, you've got unconditional support and unconditional love. And if you try and apply that to a business situation, it becomes very difficult to manage performance. It damages productivity. So any reflections on that?
I think a lot of it's about perception, isn't it? When we talk about a Pathway family, what we're really talking about is creating a culture of kindness, a culture of growth, a culture of caring, a culture of progressing. Business is perceived as generally bad. People, still use that word. It's not personal, it's business. It's about hard knows and so forth. And we're saying, yes, occasionally there's going to be situations where it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard. But what we're talking about is doing things in a way which is ultimately with respect. And, we link kindness with respect. I mean, you can be kind to somebody and still be tough because you have respect at the core of it. We have this saying that nobody cares about what you've got to say until they know that you care. So you'll take for advice from anybody if you know that their intention is that they actually, they do care. Otherwise, it's just people are giving you advice. People like throwing advice willy-nilly, but for them, it's about themselves. As the more ultimately, it's got to be about you. So if somebody's giving you advice for the betterment of you, and that could be critical advice, that could be advice that might be difficult for you to listen to, but you listen to that advice because ultimately, the other person cares and you'll take to that. But there's somebody else who might give you advice, but that may be about one-upmanship. That may be about putting you down. And he may say, the person or he or she may say it slightly differently, but you're less likely to take that on board. So from my perspective, it's about, the social behaviors and norms. It's about really creating a culture of togetherness, getting people to understand their individual responsibility as well as their collective responsibility. Because a company, a business is about the collectiveness. And this is where we come together. This is where the family is, the fact that we're on a journey together for that particular purpose. And this journey may not, we also know the fact that a career isn't necessarily for life. If somebody's, expecting the fact that they're going to be with a company for 30, 40 years, gone are those days. So you're part of a journey, and that journey may be for whatever period in your life, but for that period, you're on that bus together. And it's not about the fact that, you will have conflict. Potentially, you'll have people where you'll have disagreements, but it's about taking the negativity, the con out of the conflict. So can you be a family within a business environment? Of course you can, because it's an environment of collective responsibility, togetherness. It's like saying, you're living in a house share. There's going to be some bonds, there's going to be some connection, and ultimately that is your family because you're living together. If somebody said that, it might be seen as odd, but because you're spending so much time together, you've got a collective responsibility because you're living in that house together or in the business together, then that's what we're talking about. What we don't want, sorry, Adrian, I know you want to come in on this, but what we don't want is a culture where it's finger pointing or it's not my problem, gov type of culture, or then you've got an element of stress that haves within the business. People need to own their mistakes. We talked about that in previous weeks. They need to have ownership, accountability, responsibility, and regard this as social behaviors and norms. And really, it's about culture. It's really linking that into a cultural environment.
I'm going to bring up something else that you've said, and it might not come as the biggest surprise in the world, but something that's really got people chattering and not always agreeing, and that doesn't matter. We're starting in conversation, and maybe people have misunderstood you. Maybe I've misunderstood you in the past, but you've made this comment about experience, and you've been fairly disparaging about experience and suggesting it's not important. And a lot of people have said, experience is gold. It's the one thing that you cannot buy. And we did a little survey as part and parcel of this, and we asked people if they thought experience was valuable. And let me caveat by saying, I don't claim it was a scientific survey. The people that responded were self-selecting, and there were not that many of them. But 70% of them said that they thought experience was the most important quality. Have we misunderstood you, or are they wrong?
Again, a lot of this is about perception and how we see things and view words and what they mean to us. And people take certain words personally as well. So they take it as an insult to them, and it's not meant to be. My view is that sometimes experience is overrated. If somebody's got a website out there and said, between us we've got 100 years of experience, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that they're the most competent, the most credible, that the most professional, they've got the highest expertise? Not necessarily. If somebody says, I've been a mechanic for 30 years, I've got 30 years of experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all relevant. Yeah, and relevancy is the key. We live in a world where technology has changed. The example I remember that I gave to you is that in our sector, our funding has changed. The people that we deal with has changed. Our market has changed. Technology has changed. And unless you kept up to date, unless you're in a position where you're still relevant, and you're in a position where you've been adaptable, it's about your ability to react and adapt and pick up those things. That experience has got lesser and lesser value to it. If you're a journalist that's been there for a journalist for 30 years, if you're not up to date, if you're not relevant, how do you make that into a currency? What's happening is too many people are using that as a currency of their expertise. And experience necessarily is not necessarily expertise or competence or the best people for a particular task or job. Because there's going to be, in some cases, situations where it doesn't necessarily mean that's what this is. So experience doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best at that particular aspect of it. It may be if you've kept up to date, if you've reacted and adapted, if you've had a mindset of growth. One of the quotes that I love quoting is this Alvin Toffler quote, which is the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those people who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, or relearn. And I think that's the key. And people have taken to heart the fact that, experience has no value, but the meaning is experience doesn't necessarily relate to a currency that says that I'm more of an expert than somebody else or better than you. So my bugbear is the websites and marketing, which claims 10 years experience, 20 years experience. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean the fact that person has been successful in terms of winning business or anything like that. So that's where I get a little bit frustrated.
No, it's a very fair point. I mean, very briefly, as far as journalism is concerned, the fundamental of journalism is to be able to identify and to tell a story in an interesting way, whether it's verbally through broadcast or whether it's in words, in print or online. The techniques, the experiences haven't changed in 100 years. What's changed is some of the technology in terms of the way in which it's delivered. What I want to do, Saf, is go through there's been some lovely phrases and some lovely sound bites throughout the series, and I want to ask you to sort of just comment on some of those. We've talked a lot about leadership, and you've said being a leader is not about yourself, and you've also talked about leading from the back. And again, one of our listeners has been kind enough to write and say, look, the very leadership of essence is something that people do from the front. So there are three things I want you to just share with me and help me understand. Leadership is not about yourself. Leadership can be done from the back and not necessarily from the front. And the other thing that you said that really resonated with me was a meeting in which I've done most of the speaking has not normally been a good meeting. So help us with that.
Yeah, I mean, you said yourself, these are sort of sound bites that listeners have sort of attuned to and picked up, and on their own, we will have a different interpretation, and you've got to put everything into a bit of a context to really get the full understanding of it. And I'll go through a couple of things, fairly briefly. From my perspective, every problem in business is a people problem. So whether it's a lack of customers, capital, culture, it comes down to people. If your business is having issues with strategy, with finance, lack of finance, marketing, not enough sales, not enough customer complaints, usually it's down to people. It will be a people thing. So at the same footing, clearly, if every business problem in the business is a people problem, then every opportunity and every solution in business is also a people-based solution. So every solution is a people-based solution. And from my perspective, I use this saying, my view is that in real estate and property, people talk about location, location, location. We say people, 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 and it's about the people. So our job as leaders is to attract the best people that we can, retain them and grow them, because that's how you're going to get business growth. You create an environment where the team as a whole is better in terms of sum of parts rather than an individual. And, 1 + 1 isn't 2, but, we're there to make each other better. And that's what the definition of our team that we use is. We're a team because not the fact that we work together, but because we make each other better. We're a high growth team because we challenge each other. We normalize success, and your environment is everything. And I think if you're in an environment where you normalize success, you normalize opportunity, you normalize creativity, adaptability, we all playing a higher game, a bigger game. I think that is absolutely vital. Just as people buy from people are now also attracted to businesses, not because of the company name, but also who they're going to work for or which team they're going to work for. That's important for people. So people buy from people, but people also are attracted to people. People also leave people. And the environment of where you're working is the immediate team that you're in. So even though you're part of a bigger team, so if I'm working for a large multinational, I'll be part of a team within a team and within a team possibly. And the people that are around me will be my environment, will be my culture. So regardless of the core values of the business, that's what I'm experiencing. So if I'm experiencing positivity, if I'm with people that inspire me, that energize me, then you'll get the best out of me. But if I'm with people that are draining, that have got political games or they've got their own purpose, they've got their own agendas, and there's an element of bias and there's a conflict from a negative perspective, arguments for the sake of arguments and one-upmanship, then you're creating an environment which is a toxic environment. And then that environment will not get the best out of me, and I'll probably want to get out of that environment. People leave managers, not businesses. I think that's not a myth. I think that's, the people do that because it's the environment that you're in. It's not necessarily the business that you're working for a particular person, you're working for a team, and sometimes people stay within a company because of the people.
We've spent a bit of time in the last few weeks talking about recruitment and when you say people leave managers, not businesses, just elaborate on that a bit, if you would.
Yeah, I think it's the culture, it's the environment, isn't it? They talk about recruitment, but bad recruitment is prevalent. And this is where I often again say to my team as well, if you think paying a recruitment agency is expensive, it's a lot of money and should be avoided, imagine the cost of getting the wrong person in your organization. And it's not just about the wrong person, it's about sometimes a person, but putting them in the wrong seat. So it's about firstly getting people in your bus. I'll use that bus analogy. So you're getting people on your bus, but also making sure that they're in the right seat as well. And I think that's key as well. Being able to understand what their skills are, what their traits are, what their strengths are, and actually working to people's strengths. I think in terms of going back to recruitment, I think mistakes happen when you're unclear about where the direction of travel is. You're unclear in terms of what you're trying to seek in the first place, what your desired outcome is, and how is that going to be measured. So these are all the things that are sometimes difficult, or there's issues that happen, and then you find the fact that bad decisions are made or mistakes are made. Finding the right people and placing them in the right position, in the right order, within the right team, is easily said than done. There's books and books that have been written on the topic, podcasts that have been recorded and so forth. The last time I checked, it was like 130,000 books on leadership on Amazon. So it's a subject that's been debated, been written about at all different levels, people writing from a personal perspective, people writing from an academic perspective, researching and so forth. And this is an area which you will find everybody has got a view, but everybody has got an experience. And about really, what I would say to the audience is, listen to whatever you feel is right and then take on board what's right for you.
I mean, in the series, we've been basically talking about issues that have interest and value and importance to people that are already in business, some of them perhaps for some time, some of them perhaps relatively new. We've also reflected in one of the episodes on some of the issues that will come out of the COVID pandemic. And, we've been through a period of seismic change. And I think historians in several hundred years' time will write about this last 12 months. Massive change. And part of that change, of course, is that there are inevitably going to be people that are going to lose their jobs and looking for something, a next step in their life, and possibly they'll be considering setting up in business. Life's pretty challenging for young people, and certainly what's happened over the last 12 months is not going to make it any easier for them. So I'd like to sort of run into the dying embers of the series by giving you an opportunity to basically talk about the sort of advice. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm looking to start a business, whatever stage in their life they are, what advice would you give them? I mean, hopefully it's not don't, but I've just been made redundant, or I've just left college. It's difficult getting a job. I'd like to go into business. Just give them a bit of advice, if you would.
I mean, Adrian, I tend to slow people down. I tend to sort of say to people generally, this is where I want to do, this is how I want to do it. And there's a lot of excitement. And with excitement, with that energy, there needs to be a little bit of a sort of a critical thinking. There needs to be a little bit more planning. You know, motivation is high, there's adrenaline, there's excitement, there's emotion there. And we've got to change that a little bit around to a different way of thinking, I think. You know, we have this sort of fear at times. You know, you have a sort of reptilian brain, we have a monkey brain, and we have sort of like an entrepreneurial brain as well. And to a certain level, I think we have people who've got mixed feelings, mixed views. The people that are around them, their loved ones, their partners, will also have an opinion and view. And you're in a period where you can make decisions, you can take actions that with a clear mind you may not do. So a lot of the time I'm encouraging people to slow down a little bit, not to get too excited, not to feel the fact that they're missing out, not to feel the fact that this is be all end all and it's got to be, you know, this has to happen, and go back to their reasonings why and what do they want to do out of it. Just because somebody else is suggesting something, they've got to reflect. And sometimes, you know, they're sleeping on it, whether that sleeping on it is for a little while longer, whether that could be a week for some people, that could be a month for some people, but they've got to reflect on it. You know, it's not just a matter of, okay, I've been, you know, made redundant on a Friday and then on the weekend I'm setting up a company because I feel I need to hit the ground running and I need to do it. Reflect, readjust, realign with your thoughts, understand and take yourself into an environment where you can be challenged. And I think people make sort of a lot of these decisions in a comfort environment or in an emotional environment, and they need to be able to show, you know, why they're doing it as well. And sometimes they can put their thoughts on paper, they can reflect on it a little bit more. You'll make better decisions. And I think ultimately it's about how you make decisions, what those decisions are, and what's the process for you to have made those decisions. So really, a lot of the time when I'm talking to people in that situation, I come across as a baddie and discouraging people, but I'm not there to encourage or discourage. I'm just there for them to sort of start thinking a little bit better for themselves. You know, if this is what they want to do, fantastic. I obviously want to encourage people to develop and grow, but at the same time, if somebody's come to me for advice, that's a big responsibility. That's a burden on my shoulders. And it's easy for me to say, yeah, go out and just do it and achieve your dreams. But what I would like to do is get them to have a sense of a check with themselves, really. Is that something they really want to do? You know, what are their strengths? Just having the idea isn't the be-all, end-all. Implementation of it. So there's an element of, you know, the planning that goes into it, the strategic element of it as well. And it's a combination of those things. But at the same time, then, you know, if it's right for you, then it's right for you. And you've got to make that decision. Making those decisions in an environment which is, you know, gives you more clarity. And if you can get that clarity, that's where your best decisions are made.
Just to apply a bit of context, because the great thing about podcasts is that they are there for people to listen to at their convenience. We're having this chat, this conversation in early spring 2021. So that's the context of the situation. So given that being the case and given all that's happened and the fact that we're perhaps moving into a slightly more hopeful situation. Just by way of conclusion, are you optimistic about the future, pessimistic? How do you feel?
I'm always conscious in terms of the opportunity that, in every situation there's going to be opportunity. In every situation there's going to be some element of negativity. It is a roller coaster ride. Yes, we've gone through a different period, but life is a roller coaster. There has ups and downs. And I think you have to retain hope. You have to have hope. If you lose hope, you've got nothing. And whether it's optimistic or not, you've got to stay hopeful. You've got to stay positive, and you've got to carry on and keep growing.
Saf, there are so many people to thank. Yourself, more than anybody, for the books and for the conversations and for your time and for your wisdom and for your thoughts. Mark, who's been our producer and done a marvellous job. Rachel, who's supported us. Andrew, who's been a great supporter, come up with a lot of great ideas. But the most important people that we want to support are the people that have taken the time out to listen to us. We do hope to be back at some point in the future, but this is the point at which we bring this Canny conversation with a cause to a close. We hope people have enjoyed listening to us. We hope that they will like, subscribe and comment. And we also hope that they keep safe. That's it for now, so bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this Canny conversation with a cause. These conversations are based upon the Canny Bites books by Safaraz Ali, available on Amazon. To find out more, go online and visit Saf's website, pathwaygroup.co.uk, or join him on social media. He can be contacted at safaraz@pathwaygroup.co.uk.